Hi everyone, Audrey from YoungMinds here. On today's episode of What's on Young Minds, I have the honour of quite literally passing the mic as this episode centres Black disabled experiences. You'll hear from Femi, a filmmaker who loves nothing more than telling and amplifying unrepresented stories. And two guests, we've got Simi, a professional writer, performer, public speaker and disability rights activist. And there's also Jaleel, a freelance illustrator with a love for comics, character design and storytelling. I really hope you enjoy the show, and why not join in the conversation with us via our social media and let us know what you thought of the show. As always, show notes can be found on our website as well as our amazing resources to get help with your mental health.
Hiya, welcome to What's on Young Minds, a mental health podcast by and for young people. My name is Femi, I'm a Black disabled filmmaker, and I'll be hosting today's conversation. Joining me today are Simi and Jaleel. Do you want to just give us a little intro?
My name is Jaleel. My pronouns are she, they, and I am an illustrator.
My name is Simi. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a writer, performer, and disability rights activist.
Great, amazing, thank you. So I thought I'd just kick this off with some kind of finish the sentences. So I just wanted to start off with the first one, which is when I first started to come to terms with my disability, my biggest fear was...
I think for me, it was the way that other people would view me, because when I was starting to come to terms with my disability and accept it, I knew that I wasn't any of the ableist stereotypes people assume. I knew that I could speak for myself, that I had autonomy and all these things, but I knew that no matter what I did, no matter how sure of myself I was, no matter how much I walked down the street, yes, slay, I still knew that people would see something even less than human sometimes when I walk by, and nothing I could do would change that. And that terrified me because I was on my journey towards acceptance, and I was like, but what can I do to stop that? And I had to realize that there's nothing I could do to stop it, that other people's ignorance is really their responsibility to handle and deal with. It's their responsibility to educate themselves and not think that way. And it's my responsibility to just live my life and be as confident as I am. And that's on them if they're ableist or ignorant.
Period. What about you, Janelle?
I think the main thing I always was worrying about was the sense of failure. Because for me, I became disabled right in the middle of uni. And I just turned 20. And for me, it was kind of like I've only just kind of started to find myself already after puberty and secondary and all that. And I'd finally find myself. And then it was kind of like, well, what do I do now? I think for me, it was this sense of, it was that internalized ableism of, oh, I've failed at life now because I can't do what I used to do. I'm not going to be able to succeed. I'm not going to be able to have all these milestones that everyone else around me is getting. That's not planned for me. This is not, I don't have control. And it was generally like that. I just felt like I was failing because I had this pride that, oh yeah, I can succeed, and I was really good at that, and then now I don't feel like I'm good at that anymore. And it took a very long time to change that mindset. Like there's not really there's no failure. You don't fail at life when something like this happens. You just do life differently.
For sure. I feel like I've got a mixture of both of what you said, because I first kind of became chronically on my teens, and I was, a young man going through puberty, and I was like, I want to be this big, strong man. And I think I was training in karate at the time, and I had these dreams of mastering 5 different martial arts and being a stunt actor and all these things. So I think at first there was that, will I be able to achieve that? But then it was also how am I going to be perceived by everyone, including my family, as someone growing into a young man who at that point wasn't amounting to what people told me I had to be. And I think as time went on, then it was more independently what of the things I've said I want for myself can I still do? And my fear was, I guess, generally just like my brain equated giving those things up to not having a good life. And it took me a while to be like, okay, maybe there's certain things I can't do or certain things I can't do in the way I want, but there's other things I can do. So it doesn't mean just because I might have to let go of things that I can't enjoy my life. It just means, it's like you said, you just have to like live life differently.
How do you think you guys got to that spot? Because I didn't really have the experience of being like maybe non-disabled beforehand. And from what I've heard from some people who are non-disabled beforehand, they kind of have more of that internalized ableism than people who necessarily weren't. So like you mentioned, you reached that spot and you did as well. Like how were you able to get there then?
I think for me, it's learning new joys of life or like keeping the joys I had, but just doing it differently. Because like for me, I think like a year into like after my diagnosis and stuff, I was kind of trying to find myself, and then COVID hit. So from there, it was like, okay, well, I don't have socialization, because that was something I was realizing that I kind of did need. I still need my friends, and I feel like when I'm with my friends, I'm more myself. I can still be me. That's not it. Regardless of my disability, I'm still have that personality inside myself. But when COVID hit, I was like, okay, well, what do I do now? And for me, it was finding other people with chronic illnesses and disabilities online, like on Twitch or Instagram or stuff like that, and being able to talk about stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, people relate. I'm like, okay. And it's also seeing people as well, because people are obviously posting on online. And I think, again, seeing people with mobility aids or people who also have like symptoms that I have, and not feeling like you have to, not feeling like it's a bad thing. Like, yeah, some days I'm gonna have to just be in bed. Some days I'm just gonna be in my pajamas. Like, it's okay. That is an okay thing. And I think seeing people talk about it made me like, okay, this is fine. This is not wrong. This is just me now. And that's how I kind of gradually over the years have kind of just accepted, like, this is okay. Like, this is fine. Like, I'm still here. I'm still doing great stuff. So me 5 years ago, I can tell like them, yeah, you didn't fail. You definitely did not fail.
I think I relate to that. And for me, I think, again, it was like the pandemic where I ended up pretty ill in the pandemic and I was separated from my friends. And I remember just having this moment where I said to myself, like, I just deserve to be happy at any point, and I don't want to reserve the prospect of happiness for when I'm at my best. And that then got me to a point where I was like, you know, in bed, I was like, if I'm in bed and I can't do much, what will make me happy? Will it be just binging something on Netflix? Will it be just looking outside, staring at my garden? Will it be cuddling with my dog? It was, I think, redefining almost everything in this new kind of experience and being like, okay, but I can still have these feelings, because I think it was like the end goal. Like, I can have joy and I can have love and I can have belonging, but it might just mean that the way to get there is different. But from there, I kind of just wanted to go on to a next question, and here's another finish the sentence, which is, for me, Black disabled joy is
freedom. I feel like it is just truly being free in yourself, and like free in yourself, free to do what you want to do with no limitations, not feeling like the, society's limitations are truly your limitations. And, you be happy in yourself, be happy in your skin, embracing what makes you different, because I feel it is a good thing to be different. It makes you unique in your own life experiences. So I feel like, having that freedom that I still can do whatever I want. So yeah, I said freedom.
I'd say for me, it probably is an embracing of our culture. And I think in order to do that, you have to kind of crip your mindset, which I think is a little bit what you were mentioning, where you have to let go of like the non-disabled assumption that the way we do things is wrong. That like I had to accept when I lost the ability to write my fingers, that, I could write with a pen in my mouth. And that's not wrong, that's just different. And feeling vibrations of music instead of listening with your ears isn't wrong, it's just different. And stimming and like everything of how we interact with the world is different. Like we move through crip time, which is like this concept where time moves through our body differently. And like it doesn't necessarily abide to like a capitalist mindset or anything, but it's just an acceptance of some days we lie in bed, sometimes we struggle to do things as fast as non-disabled people do, but that's fine. We're doing it in crip time. This is how we do things. And it's just an acceptance of that. And then once you have that, you can celebrate disability culture and see the beauty in the different ways that we do things. In like how a wheelchair dancer moves across the stage, or someone combines sign language with dance movements and to express their emotions. And you just embrace that and see that this is beautiful. And it may not work the way the rest of the world works, but that's what makes it so beautiful and unique in that way. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, for me, I think I'd say honestly, like from the get-go, it is acceptance and it is home. And I mean, there's such a beautiful thing about being Black and disabled, because it's like you say, we have so much culture to pull from. And I have fond memories of like being a kid and going to parties, like because I'm Nigerian, like these crazy weddings. And there was always someone, even if it was just someone a bit elderly who maybe couldn't move the same or dance the same, but they were still there and they were still accepted. And that's something I always try and carry forward. And it's something I've noticed now, is you can still do some things if there's that like safe space or accommodation. And I think especially for me, like with the culture I've grown up in, it's being able to party in a different way, being able to enjoy our food in a different way, how we dress. And it's really important to me as well with my walking stick. Like anytime I take a picture of a fit and put it on Instagram, the stick is there because that's part of my fashion now and it's a part of me. And that feels almost like very unique to me and almost like unique to us, because let's not lie, Black people have been doing fashion forever. We're the leaders in that. So I think incorporating those parts of you, like your disability, and especially in a sense where sometimes industries or places or magazines will be like, oh yeah, you can't. It's like, you can still look really good in your wheelchair with whatever fit you want. You can pimp out the wheelchair. Like it's incorporating all facets of yourself into whatever you like. And whether that's like watching anime or whatever, it's all of that stuff. But moving on from there, I just wanted to ask, like, another one is something that has inspired me recently is, it can, be anything, some music, a show, comic. Is there anything that springs to mind?
Probably Then Barbara Met Alan. The film. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
I loved it so much because I feel like it's rare that we learn about disability history, but when we do, it's from the American lens. But we had a whole rights movement here in the UK that people don't really talk about. So it showcased that. Also loved the actor in it. She's in Doctor Who as well. And yeah, just see on a set, like all these hundreds of disabled people flooding the streets, imitating that, those protests that happen in real life. Just, it was amazing to see, and it really inspired me. And the fact that I was like, I want to do things like this as well, where I have impact and you can make a difference for our community, which you definitely can.
I feel like recently it's more just been like, there's been an increase, maybe it's the algorithm, there's been an increase on my Instagram and TikTok of seeing more disabled people doing like, and their milestones. Which is just always like, either it's people, getting engaged, getting married, having kids, even if these aren't really things that I personally want, it's still, it's, it's general life stuff that people celebrate. And it's one of the things to remind like me, like, I can still do regular things. There's no barriers. Or it's people having, being gifted an award, or they get a big deal with a company, or they release a book, they do a TV show, they do all these big achievements. It inspires me, and it's like, okay, yeah, I can still achieve like my milestones, like even if it takes longer or have to pause and stop, restart, whatever, I can still do it. You know, I do it differently. It's one of the things of me reminding myself not to compare myself to like my non-disabled peers who, like, there'll be times in the back of my head I'll be like, oh, you know, they've achieved this, they've achieved that. I can't do it the way they've done it because there are unfortunately barriers that stop me, but I've still done X, Y, and Z. You know, I still graduated twice. You know, I've done all these good things that actually do make me happy. And I was like, okay. So it's inspiring to see other people reach those milestones, and it reminds me that I can still do that.
That's great. I really like what you're saying about specifically from the disabled lens of stopping and starting, because that reminds me of someone that inspired me recently. Her name's Tinwa. She's like a YouTuber. She does video essays talking about kind of different topics, and she usually does one like once a month, every 2 months. She just disappeared for 8 months and she came back and she was just like, sorry, I've been gone, but here I am. And it was almost that I've just done this and you have to deal with it, that I really appreciated, because again, like I want to do more content. And I think when I started and I was looking up like tips, everyone was like, oh yeah, be consistent, post every day, post 5 times a day. And I mean, for one, I was like, I don't have the time to do that. I got to be paying my bills too. But also just, again, as a disabled person, we can't always continue at the same pace. Yeah. And I think now I've been doing it for a few months, I'm realizing sometimes that I can just dip out and come back and people just be, oh, okay, cool, you're back. So I think that's been really nice to know that, again, you have to march to the beat of your own drum, and that it is okay to march to the beat of your own drum. But moving on from that, just wanted to ask, what's one thing that helps you to when you're struggling?
Okay, firstly, paracetamol. I've found like when I'm struggling, and it's normally like a day where like, okay, this is going to be a bedbound day, we're going to just be in bed, but I make sure like I'm comfortable. The best, like I've got like even my curtains are drawn so I'm not having too much light. I'm, you know, in my, is it snooty?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I've got like a propped up pillow so I'm not, because sometimes I feel like if I'm completely flat, all my joints start to ache. So I need to be propped up. But then I have my water, I have snacks, I've got my iPad or my laptop, and I'm probably either playing The Sims, drawing, watching people game or Twitch, just anything that's like, okay, we're just gonna do the things that just make us happy. Just stimulate the happiness, even if we're just feeling really crap, and like I'm trying to ignore any pains I'm having. I'm just comfortable. And I think that's my main thing, is like I'm gonna be comfortable. I'm not gonna think about how like I'm gonna be in bed all day and that might not be productive. I am being productive because I'm resting.
For sure.
For me, if I'm struggling, it's usually my mental health I'm struggling with, in which case family really, really helps. Me and my sister hanging out, or just like workouts and exercising. I do sometimes like seated workouts that are just things you could do from sitting in a chair, and moving helps, and reading, and just doing things that I enjoy doing, but also kind of giving myself the space to be like, yeah, like you've accepted yourself, and it doesn't mean that you're not proud to be who you are. If you do just have some days where you're just like, I wish this wasn't the case. I wish, you know, I didn't have to book taxis and like deal with taxi drivers and have all this. And some days I just wish that could go away a little bit and I could chill. And it's some days if my back really hurts or something, and it's like the fact that I feel this pain and this irritation doesn't take away from the fact that like I've accepted myself. Self-love isn't always 100%. You're always happy. You always feel great. So allowing yourself to have those dips and to just feel a bit terrible sometimes is like, just let yourself be in that place and know that it doesn't mean that you don't love yourself.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%, because a big shift I noticed within myself was like when I got to that point where if I was feeling really in pain or really tired, I was like, okay, this is where I am now. And honestly, like a big part of that was I don't work full time anymore. So I noticed without that external demand to perform or be whatever, I noticed how much more I didn't care about it. I'll be like, oh, okay, I'm in pain. That's my day now. And I think just having that acceptance usually means that even when I'm struggling physically, I have a lot more patience with it and tolerance. And I think for me as well, like I spend a lot of time inside, partially because I'm a hermit, but partially obviously because I'm in pain a lot. So I focus a lot on simple little pleasures that are around. And I started gardening last year and I've got some potato plants growing now. And like I talk to them most days. I go to them, I check they're all right. And it's one of those things where I just spend time staring at them and marveling at the beauty of nature. And it just helps take me out of it. Because I think sometimes like if I'm feeling really bad, I feel very like wrapped up in my own world and my own suffering in a sense. And sometimes just being able to step out into the garden and just look at these things and being like, I can still enjoy this. And I think the beauty of nature is that it's always going to be around. Like I'm like, my potato plant's always going to be here. There's going to be birds singing all the time, foxes like barging into my garden, which I'm like, okay, don't come closer. But do you know what I mean? There's all these things that I can always have access to, because before I always wanted to be out or be with people, and sometimes these things aren't possible, whereas my garden is always there and nature is always there and stuff. So that's, I think, it's something that's really helped. But I wanted to ask if also how your process has evolved over time in terms of like self-care and taking care of yourself. And like we're talking about struggling, is there anything that you've changed over the years or things you've shared and been like, these practices aren't for me?
I used to tackle things in kind of an unhealthy way where I would stick to a really strict schedule. And if I was following that schedule, I was being very productive. And usually I would be happier as well because I'd be getting things done. But then all it would take was just a day not doing the schedule or not following everything exactly correctly to feel really terrible and disappointed in myself. And I think I just kind of needed to let that go a bit and let myself breathe and allow myself to have more space, more periods. I just understand and listen to my body more and be like, these expectations or things that non-disabled people can stick to, I don't think I'll ever fully be able to do all those things and stick to the same schedules, and just let that go and be like, I have to listen to my body and do things my way. And that's completely valid. And I know like a capitalist society hates that so much. But
sure.
I've just got to let that go and say, this is what I need to do for me and take things a bit more slow here and there.
I feel like before the self-care that at least I was like being taught when it came to like my condition was the whole like, oh, but you need to get some fresh air, you need to have a walk, you need to, you know, just, and there was a time where I felt like it helped then, where I was like, I think probably because of COVID, and for me being stuck inside was making me worse. So I did try like once a week, just doing a little bit of a walk. And that did help, like, because it became a routine. And I know once it becomes a routine, it's not as bad. But I think I'm now at this stage now where I know for me, the idea of like, you know, it's basically like light exercise that it doesn't work for me. That it just doesn't work for me. If I do that, it will work for me temporarily, but I will have the onset of my fatigue and my pain afterwards. And then I'm like, okay, well, I've just done self-care and it's actually not cared for me very much. So it's learning what actually helps me and benefits me in the long term.
Yeah, for sure.
So for me, like it's the smallest thing of like me just having water by myself, like a big jug of water. Because I know for me, when I'm feeling like really, really low, either mentally or just like physically, it does help. I don't know I don't know what in water. I know what's in water, but the H2O is doing something. And I do feel like, oh, okay. Like it, and I don't know what it is, but it does just perk me up. But also it's become a routine that I just need the water. It will refresh me. And even small things of like, even if I'm even in my bed for a long time, I just make sure that I'm just doing like little exercises, like, you know, to like hand and wrist, just to make sure I'm not cramping or anything like that. And it's small, and it's, for me, it is still self-care because I'm bettering myself.
Mm.
So it's just knowing that this is my self-care that works for me. And not taking what someone thinks
Would work for
will
you.
work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because doctors can recommend things, but like not all experiences are like a monolith. But also it can be tricky with like diagnoses and things. Like, do you all have like a diagnosis for your condition?
Yeah.
Sometimes they can be hard to get, and sometimes you could be put into different categories and things like that, which could be confusing. I mean, technically mine is like serious progressive axonal polyneuropathy, which like if you Google, you get nothing. And I've talked to so many people online in person, never seen anyone else with that condition. And with diagnosis and like, we recommend this for this, it can get difficult, but also with like, even little things like going for auditions where they're so specific, they ask for like cerebral palsy or Down syndrome or like the conditions that have a name. Like someone like me will never be able to go for those things because I don't have like a diagnosis that's like, no one's going to have like open audition for serious progressive axonal polyneuropathy. So it's like, sometimes it helps to be more broad and to accept that like experiences are monoliths and like some categories and groups are great. Like if people say, we recommend these exercises like you were talking about for like wheelchair users with this kind of condition, and like social clubs for like wheelchair users or deaf people or things like that. But when it gets really specific, it can kind of almost be alienating.
Yeah.
Because then you don't find those people. So yeah.
Yeah, it's tough because I feel like I think in general everyone wants to categorize things, and with disabilities, and this includes just general public, but also doctors. Like there's kind of ones that everyone knows about, and then it trickles down into stuff, but it's still a lot of people need to come to understand that. Because I think you have chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yeah.
Me too. And our experiences could be completely different. Things that could help you might not help me, vice versa. And like I also have Crohn's disease. And when I first started trying to understand that, I was finding other people with Crohn's and honestly only looking at people who were like assimilating better, if I'm being real. Like there was this one guy I followed who was like really muscly and went to the gym, and I was messaging him for tips and he was like, eat this and eat that. And I ate that. And I was like, okay, my stomach said no. And I think from that point, it took me a while to, with self-care, it was like you're saying, I had to have my own personal brand. And it was just, I think sometimes I look at my body like a machine and one that I do love, but it's just, this works, this doesn't work. And that's all it takes. And it takes trial and error. But from there, for me, it's just been whatever can help. Like I take Lemsip for pain usually because that just happens to be the thing that helps. And again, it's like, I don't know what the science is, the same with you and like your water, but it's just, this helps, therefore I do it. And I think especially with now, because self-care is a bit kind of like monetized a bit, where everyone's trying to say, okay, we're going to sell you this self-care and that self-care. I was like, I love my bath bombs and I love my face mask, but it's like you say, sometimes for me, self-care is just stopping. Sometimes it's wrapping up in my duvet and getting my partner to wrap me up so I can't get out because that sensation feels good. I think it's that taking a step back from the world and then learning what your body needs and what your body likes and just understanding that. And I think it's easier to do that without that almost like external, this, you need to do this for your condition, and you need to do that. It's just like, I have to do this for my body. And that's kind of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
You mentioned that you knew someone else with your condition. Do you feel like you guys in general know like lots of other disabled or like Black and disabled people as well?
No, not many. I mean, obviously that event we did was probably the only time I've met someone who's Black and disabled. But other than that, I've probably only met one other person in real life who had chronic fatigue syndrome, but they were cured. They got better. They had a surgery and then they got better, and now they're, and it was one of those times where it's like, I kind of wish I maybe had not known about this, because then it's like, okay, now everyone knows that we're two people who have had the same thing, but this person has like basically come out good. And now there's a pressure. I'm like, oh, so, you can get better, you can, and I'm like, I don't want to say it as a bad thing, but it's like, I don't think that's going to be me. But that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just me right now. I don't need a cure. It's a way of, I just need things to be accessible and let me be. That's it. That's it. So yeah, I don't know many people, unfortunately.
I feel like I know a few people like online. My best friend is funny because like we both met when we were both like able-bodied years ago through Comic-Con. Then I got disabled, and then years later she ended up chronically ill as well. Which is why it's like, out of all my friends I have from my teen years, she's the only one like I'm tight with. And I'm like, okay, because we get it. But more than just knowing people online, I think if I go to an event and there are other people, like even if they have invisible disabilities, like I think I have like a sixth sense to find my people now. And I think because I was talking to someone recently, I went to it was like a Black Fae picnic where we were all dressed up as fairies.
Oh, I love that.
And I just started talking to a couple of people. And then when we got real, we started talking about disability. And I was like, so this is why I gravitated towards you. And I think there's something, it's hard to articulate, but you kind of understand, because the reality is, especially being Black and disabled, there's quite a heightened level of intelligence and smarts and awareness and empathy I think we have to maneuver through a world that isn't built for us. So I think usually, when I go to certain spaces, I'm always surveying. I'm like, there's got to be at least one other person like me here. Even if I don't know them, just feeling that someone else is in will let me know, yes, I can stay here or I can have a good time. Like if I'm the only one in the room, I'm like, okay, maybe I'll stay for 10 minutes, but I've got my eye on the door. So I think it's the thing though, isn't it? Connecting with people online is just the best way, especially for us, because there's so few of us.
There is. I think I've had the experience where it's much easier to meet disabled and queer people. And I meet tons of disabled and queer people. Like there's such a large number of us in the community that happen to also be queer. I think there's some kind of link there. But the Black and disabled is something you see slightly less. I think I only have one really friend who I think identifies as like brown and disabled and queer. But I had that experience too. I went to like this butch femme picnic, which was really inclusive of like including trans people and more than just lesbians. Like it really is just anyone who feels like they fit the butch femme type. But then I was the only one who like, I don't know, I could see was disabled. And the vibe was so off and weird, and almost no one approached me. And I felt so kind of like, even though we have like two things in common, even the Black and the queer thing, but there's this other thing, and it's just like, it can never be, sometimes it's frustrating when you get treated that way. But I feel like I'm much more likely to be accepted and treated without ableism in queer spaces. I felt like they kind of get it a little bit. I feel like anyone of any minority group, like you said, tends to be a little bit more resilient because you have to face so much discrimination. I think that tends to make people more resilient. But at the same time, like being here with like you two is such a great experience because it is rare. And I think also it's not just Black and disabled, it's also our queerness as well, which unites us as well, which is great.
Okay, cool. I've got a big juicy question for you two. How have you found it trying to form and maintain like meaningful relationships with people as a Black disabled person?
Tough. It was like, it felt like a chess match when I started to join dating sites. They're trying to like balance everything was tough because especially on queer dating sites, at least the ones I used, there weren't that many Black people or disabled people. And so I first started out with, not having on my profile that I was disabled and kind of, I called it rolling out of the closet to people after they got to know me more, which didn't end up going well, so that I had it on my profile. And then what I had is almost no one swiping on me. I actually swiped all the way through to the end of Bumble. Bumble said there's no one left within like an 80 radius that we could show you. I was like, wow. So what I do, and I do defend this, is I don't say that I'm disabled on my profile. And I do eventually tell people, just because I think there is so much, ableist assumptions people have in their mind when they see a disabled person. And like, without knowing it, almost every non-disabled person has that. And it's so intense that when they meet me and they speak me and they get to see that I'm just like a normal person, all of that goes away.
Yeah.
And then I say I'm disabled and they're like, oh, that's actually okay. But I feel like still if they were just to see me and see me disabled with my hands, my wrist, fingers in wheelchair, they would have swiped. So I think if we lived in a society where it wasn't ableism everywhere, I would have that I was disabled on my profile. But because we don't, I don't put it there. And I kind of defend that decision. But people have been nice afterwards and I've had some meaningful connections, which has been great. And I was surprised by how cool people were with it. And after they knew, and so that's been great, especially also in the queer scene as well. Dating, I feel like the beauty standards can be a lot higher in like the gay and lesbian community. So that was tough to deal with, but I've made some good ones. How about you?
So it's kind of interesting because like I've kind of had the spectrum of like dating before and after, and more so just kind of like before my diagnosis, I already had this kind of the back of the feeling of like knowing this perception of me as a Black woman and dating and trying to find relationships. Because for me, especially in a very like white dominated like society, it's kind of like, okay, I don't feel as pretty or there's like a fetish attached to it. But then once I was disabled, then that almost became like the cloud across people's eyes. It's ended like I don't know, like maybe 3 of my relationships. And when it came to dating apps, when I didn't say or show any pictures of my AIDS or anything like that, I just got like, I guess like a normal amount of swipes, likes, whatever, as just a Black a person on there. And it was only when I decided actually no, because when I meet people, I'm either going to have my cane or my walking stick. So normally I would say like, oh yeah, I have ME. So it just means, but I always say I have ME, so this just means, right, so they don't start to assume anything. But then I just started adding my picture as like the first thing, because for me, I was just like, at this point now, it weeds out anyone who I don't want to bother with. And then the people that actually can see past the AIDS and can see the person, I'm like, okay, I can give you a chance. But it's kind of just gotten to that point now where I don't want to be seen as someone who needs help and needs a carer, because that's not what I'm looking for. I can do these things on my own. I'm already doing these things. I just want what everyone else wants, which is just like love and you know, partnership and stuff like that. So it's kind of gotten to that point now where I'm just doing life, and if anything organically happens, 'cause for me, I think the dating apps are they just don't mentally, they just don't do good. Because you just have this, you know, you're not getting as many likes if you change your pictures or your description so it doesn't mention something, then you see an increase and you're like, oh, okay. And it's like, and at this point it's just like, I'm just living my life. I'm not going to cater to someone's prejudice. I'm just going to do me, and if someone can see past that, then, you know, I'll see what happens, sort of thing. But now I'm just like, I just need a cat.
Yeah.
I just need a cat.
Cat's always just going to treat you how it wants to. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're disabled or not. Yeah, I think, do you know, it's funny because I've been with my partner for 6 years, and so before I met them, I didn't have a diagnosis of CFS, and I wasn't suffering as much. So I was like completely like invisibly disabled just because I had Crohn's disease. And I think for me, then it was hard navigating it, because if you looked at me on a dating app, like you couldn't tell. And it is also then I had that struggle of bringing it up, but it would say it all over my Instagram. And I remember like hanging out with a guy, and we followed each other. He saw I had Crohn's disease on it, didn't say anything. And then later on, he gave me his phone to like look at a recipe or something, and then I seen he had like parentheses open on Wikipedia. I remember being sat there like, why didn't you just ask me? And I think that really almost summed up in a way, I think especially like the English culture of like never asking these things. And when I met my partner, it's so funny because we met on Grindr, so I was like, this is not going to go anywhere. But I was cancelling a lot because I was quite ill at the time, and they were just chill, and they rang me up and asked what was going on, and I told them about it, and they just like were unfazed. And I remember being like so confused, like my brain could not handle it. I was like, someone being decent about my chronic health, like, but I think even just in the realm of friendships and stuff, I think I felt like loads of people will do anything to avoid acknowledging that you're disabled. Yes. And sometimes, because I've had loads of confrontations with people, because I'm Nigerian and Jamaican, I can fight. Like I pull it up and they're like, oh, well, I was waiting for you to say it. And I was just like, I think I never understood that, because for me, as a friend or as someone who cares, you'll ask about anything. And I remember eventually coming to a point where I said, I think at this point, if someone cares, they will ask. And then last year I met like a new friend, and the first time we met up, because we've been talking online, he was literally he saw my stick and he's like, are you okay walking from here to here? Do you want to walk slower? Do you want to do this? Are you okay eating this? And it really reaffirmed in my brain that belief that the people that matter and that do care will show it without you having to do anything. So that's, again, especially with friendships, how I try and live now is like, I'm not going to entertain anything unless someone's showing like an active interest. Because it's also, I think for me, like I said, my best friend, she's got endo, and whenever we're hanging out, it's, you know, is this place okay for you? Can you eat this? Do you need somewhere with better seating? And I was like, if I can do that, if I can just ask these questions, even though obviously I don't understand what it's like to have endo and I never will, if I can just make her feel like she's being listened to and heard and ask those questions, then anyone can. And I think that's the rule of thumb I always tell other disabled people to have, because if I'd had that point of view 5 years ago, it would have saved me so much like wasted energy and, you know, busted friendships. Because I think it's an unfortunate fact about a lot of people, and a lot of people can just get away with not asking and pretending that disabilities don't exist because it doesn't affect them. You know, it might one day, but not now. But from there, I wanted to ask, how can we find a sense of community when we're such an underrepresented group? Like, we're Black and disabled. There's not many of us, especially in this crazy island with a lot of rain. So how do you finding it, and what do you do?
It's tough. I think the internet really helps. And I know I really struggled before I had met someone who was disabled, especially Black and disabled, because I mean, you were talking about friends and friendships and things like that. And I had really negative experiences because I experienced being disabled in secondary school and primary school. And the teens in secondary, it was very much a just ignore thing. And I was ignored so much. I would do things like play these games where I'd walk down a hallway with tears on my face and, you know, make bets with myself if anyone was going to stop and say something, or I'd count the amount of words I said in a day and like it'd be less than 10 or something. And I did have some people there that were great, but I lost so many friends when I had to become a permanent wheelchair user. And it was just the worst experience, ableism from teachers and from students. I hated that place so much. And so now that I've moved to London, I really only have disabled friends. It's such a different experience. And they're friends, like you said, who you can ask those questions to. And they just get things that no one's really like gotten to the same degree before. Like I've been shocked by like how they're like, oh, you have that. I experienced that too. I'm like, wow. So it really was like online. Well, I guess I found most people through like work, because I do a lot of work with disability groups. But just even the online communities, you can find so much validation through them. And like, not every school will be as horrible as mine was. And all non-disabled people never get it and treat you terribly. But sometimes it really is good to just find those spaces and those people who just kind of do instantly get it without all the explanations. So I'm very glad that I'm no longer in a place like that, where I felt like every day was one of those days where I was having to explain things or feeling really left out just because of who I was.
For sure.
I'd probably say the same thing. Like the internet for me is probably the only place right now where, the sense of community is the easiest way. It's just accessible. I feel like that's another thing I'm realizing, that I use the internet probably more because I'm at home more. I can't physically go to places as often because I need to reserve my energy. And it's easy to create these communities because, for the most part, most people have their phone in their pocket, or, they'll be at a screen at some point. So it's just easy to connect and like create events that just include everyone in some kind of way. Like a lot of times I just really enjoy like doing like game nights online. It's just, easy, even if and it's normally also like doing games that it's still easy for everyone. Nothing, there's no exclusion in some kind of way. Like, I don't know, it's like, there's a game called like Gartic Phone where you just get a prompt and you draw it and then something like, so it's easy, it's fun, and you just have a laugh. And I'm more and more I'm gravitating towards online communities, which I kind of started to steer away from as I got older from a teen, because I grew up online. I grew up on Tumblr. I got all the on, and I was just like, I'm an adult. I should probably talk to people in person now, and I got used to that. And now I'm like, okay, this actually works better for me, and I can connect with my friends more.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. Definitely like online, there's just so many online spaces and Facebook groups. And I think I've also noticed like I've been trying to be way more politically active over the past few years. And I think especially marry activism with my life. I don't want it to be something I'm like, oh, let me drop it. And it's like, how do I fit this into almost like the fabric of my existence? And I'm noticing maybe like politically active spaces tend to have better disability politics. And I think for me, then it just means that certain spaces or things, it's that understanding like, oh, okay, there might not be people like me here, but I will be welcome and safe here, and kind of having that expansion. I think I'm really lucky that, because my partner is able-bodied, it's just really good. My health, and my cousins are able-bodied too, really great. Like I just happen to have these people almost like fall around me, but online still is something I rely on. And even sometimes, I think it's like you're saying, sometimes you're just seeing another Black disabled person being online. We don't even have to interact, but seeing them living their life online, just doing whatever, even if it's just, I made dinner tonight or I went for a walk. I think even just seeing people do the mundane makes me feel very connected. And I always feel like there's this like, I feel like what's that? The Hunger Games salute they do? Like we do that across the internet. I think just seeing people living their lives, and sometimes they'll share about a struggle they had, but then it's also sometimes it's just like, yeah, so I got back and I got a takeaway or something. I don't know. It's just that honesty of their life I really appreciate. I just wanted to close with one final question. What's one thing you would say to like a young person who shares your disability? I'm saying young, like, I don't know, 10 years younger. It could be you, it could be a young you, or it could just be someone, going through things that you might have gone through. What would you say?
I would probably say, it's okay to have the struggle. It's okay that things are hard. It obviously it's one of those things of remembering, like, you're allowed to also grieve. And, because coming from someone who, did have, you do grieve your past life. And for me, if there's anyone that has like a chronic illness that's quite similar to mine, it would be like, you are allowed to grieve. And there's not one, grief in any kind of way. It's not just there and then. It can happen again. 5 years you've accepted it, but you'll get, you might get another part where you're like, I do miss this. So it's okay to, you can still be on the right track, a new path, but it's okay to be like, okay, but I still do miss this. And I think it's about allowing yourself to feel whatever your body's to allow yourself. Because I think being able to grieve, you can process it, and then you can use that process to actually, okay, I have felt like I've lost this, but what have I gained? What am I gaining now? It's a new perspective I'm gaining. It's it's a new dress sense because I have to adapt my mobility aids to my fashion. It's those sort of things. So I would say, yeah, like allow yourself to grieve whilst also knowing that you can embrace this new you.
I'd probably say to little Simi, just know that things are possible. There are going to be so many things that make you think things aren't possible. You will be kicked out of theatre club for being disabled when you're 12. You know, the film course will be ableist and force you to strap a camera to your head for not much reason. And that will make you think, it'll make you give up on your dream. But I would just say to keep fighting for it because you can be a performer, you will be one. And that even though you don't see it on screen, you don't see people like you will be that person in that space that other people will then see and then know that it is possible as well. So if you don't see it there, then go and be that change and be that light, and don't let anyone, no ableist teachers or no one who just doesn't understand you in the way that you are, tell you that you can't do something, because you are powerful in the way that you do things. It's different, but it's unique. And don't listen to the people who tell you that it's wrong. The way, sorry, get a bit emotional because you face so much of it, but just know that at the end, what it will be is a transformation where you realize that it's uniqueness. Yeah.
That's amazing. I would just say to young me or anyone else young that there is always a way that you can adapt things to do things for you. I think the world often is like, no, you can't do that. Or, no, I don't want to do that. And like, I feel like the past 10 years of my life has been understanding how much of that is just people being ableist and horrible and lazy. There's a lot of my hobbies that I've been able to transform to work for me now. And there's been ways I've been able to work that work better for me now. I think it's going to be a tough journey, and there might be a lot of kind of advocating for yourself, but also you have every right to be like, I'm tired of advocating for myself. Let me just stop. I think there's nothing wrong with that because it's quite a lot, I think. And especially like being Black and disabled, sometimes you might feel like you're the only one in a space. So I think you're entitled to whatever you need, but you're also entitled to step away. And I think the greatest gift you have is being able to imagine something that a lot of people can't imagine. I've seen throughout history Black disabled people be at the forefront of movements and imagine new worlds for us that loads of people said couldn't happen. And I have no doubt, you know, my kids and my kids' kids are going to be able to benefit from things that other Black disabled people are doing now, that we're doing now. And I think there's such a beauty and a power in that. And there's also such beauty and power in just choosing yourself when so much around you says you can't. And even when choosing yourself, it's just choosing to step away. That's incredibly radical and powerful. And I think there's so much beauty in the small things that we all do, and to embrace that. Yeah, so we've come to the end of today's conversation. I want to say thank you so much to you both for sharing. It's been such an amazing experience. I'm trying to keep my tears in because I don't want to cry. It's been really, really nice. And thanks so much to our listeners. It's been really great. So thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.